In the vast expanse of space, the Galactic Council was faced with a new and frightening challenge. The Zakral, a species of deadly predators, had been detected near the edge of known space. The Council had never seen anything like them before. The Zakral were enormous, with sharp claws and powerful jaws. Their reputation for destruction preceded them, and fear spread quickly among the galaxy's leaders. The Council gathered for an urgent meeting. Delegates from various planets filled the grand chamber, their faces tense with worry. Holographic images of the Zakral flickered in the center of the room. The creatures looked even more terrifying in the images, with their dark scales and fierce eyes. Some delegates whispered nervously, while others looked resolute. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety. "We cannot let this threat go unchecked," declared High Commander Zorak, a stern alien with green skin and piercing eyes. "The Zakral could wipe out entire planets if they choose to invade." "I agree," said Delegate Zara, a representative from the peaceful planet of Alara. "But how do we deal with such a fearsome species? They are known for their aggression and power." The room was filled with murmurs of agreement. The idea of a direct confrontation with the Zakral was terrifying. Most of the delegates believed that the only way to handle them was to prepare for war. The Council debated fiercely, discussing strategies and forming plans to protect their worlds. Meanwhile, among the Council members was Captain Julia Kane, a human explorer known for her bravery and resourcefulness. She had been listening to the heated discussion with a growing sense of urgency. Kane was not like the other delegates. She saw the Zakral not just as a threat, but as a species with potential. She believed that there might be a way to communicate with them instead of immediately resorting to violence. When the meeting ended, Kane approached High Commander Zorak. "I'd like to request permission to make first contact with the Zakral," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with determination. Zorak looked at her with surprise. "You want to go to their territory? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" "I understand the risks," Kane replied. "But we don't know everything about the Zakral. What if there's a chance for peace? If we approach them with understanding, we might find a way to avoid a conflict." Zorak's gaze was skeptical. "This is a bold move, Captain. But you're also risking the lives of your crew." Kane nodded. "I know, but I believe we have to try. If there's even a small chance of finding common ground, it's worth it." After a moment of contemplation, Zorak sighed. "Very well. You have permission to go, but be cautious. The Council will be watching closely." Kane thanked him and left the meeting room. She quickly gathered her crew and prepared for the mission. Her team consisted of skilled pilots, engineers, and scientists, all of whom trusted Kane's judgment. As they prepared their ship for departure, excitement mixed with fear among the crew. They were about to venture into unknown and dangerous territory, but they were also hopeful. The spaceship, named Endeavor, was equipped with the latest technology to help them survive in the hostile environment of the Zakral's homeworld. As they set course for the edge of the galaxy, Kane looked out at the stars, her mind filled with both hope and worry. The journey was long and filled with tension. Each crew member was on edge, knowing that their mission could change the fate of the galaxy. As they approached the Zakral's territory, the stars seemed to grow dimmer, overshadowed by the dark presence of the unknown. Kane and her crew were about to face one of the greatest challenges of their lives. The Zakral were waiting, and the outcome of their meeting could determine whether the galaxy would see peace or fall into chaos. Face to face with danger, the spaceship Endeavor traveled through the dark and silent space toward the Zakral's homeworld. Inside, the crew was tense but focused. Captain Julia Kane, standing at the helm, gave them encouraging smiles, trying to keep their spirits high. They had left the safety of known space and entered a region that was uncharted and dangerous. As they approached the Zakral's territory, the stars seemed to fade, swallowed by a growing darkness. The crew could see the swirling, ominous clouds of the Zakral home system on their monitors. The planet they were heading toward was a rugged, harsh world covered in mountains and deep canyons. The atmosphere was thick with a strange orange haze. "Prepare for landing," Kane instructed her crew. The ship descended through the dense atmosphere, shaking with turbulence. The crew strapped in tightly, their nerves on edge. The planet's surface came into view, a landscape of jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. The Endeavor landed in a rocky valley surrounded by towering cliffs. Kane and her team stepped out, clad in protective suits to shield them from the harsh environment. The air was cold and heavy, and the ground was uneven. The planet felt alive with a sense of danger. As they ventured further into the valley, the crew spotted signs of the Zekral's presence. Massive claw marks were carved into the rocks, and strange, deep growls echoed in the distance. Kane led the way, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She knew they were about to encounter the creatures that had terrified the galaxy. The crew's sensors picked up movement nearby. They turned to see a group of Zekral emerging from the shadows. The predators were even more imposing up close. Their scales glistened with a dark sheen, and their eyes glowed with an intense yellow light. They were massive, with powerful limbs and sharp teeth. The Zekral stopped and stared at the humans with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Kane took a deep breath and stepped forward, holding her hands out to show she meant no harm. She spoke slowly and calmly, "We come in peace. We want to understand you." The Zekral watched her with wary eyes. They communicated with low, rumbling growls, their eyes never leaving the humans. One of them, larger and with a more ornate set of scales, stepped forward. This was the leader, known as a Khazar. Kane continued to speak, trying to show respect and patience. She used simple gestures and made sure her tone was gentle. She could see the Khazar studying her, its eyes narrowing as it tried to make sense of her intentions. Time seemed to stretch as Kane and the Khazar exchanged silent glances. The rest of the Zekral observed from a distance, their growls and movements quiet. It was clear that this meeting was unlike any they had experienced before. The usual aggression of the Zekral was replaced by a cautious curiosity. Finally, the Khazar let out a soft, almost questioning growl. It tilted its head, a gesture that seemed to signal a shift in its attitude. Kane took this as a sign of progress. She slowly moved closer, holding out a small device that projected a hologram of Earth. The Zekral watched the hologram with interest. They seemed fascinated by the images of humans, animals, and landscapes from Earth. Kane took this opportunity to explain more about humanity's world, showing that they were more than just the enemy the Zekral might have expected. The tension began to ease. The Khazar approached the hologram, its large claws moving carefully to touch the images. Kane could see the signs of understanding in its eyes. She felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to build a bridge between their worlds. As the sun began to set over the harsh landscape, casting long shadows, Kane and her team felt a glimmer of success. They had made the first step toward understanding the Zekral. The meeting was far from over, but the initial contact had opened a door to possibilities. The crew returned to the endeavor with a mix of relief and anticipation. They had faced the danger and made a connection. The galaxy's perception of the Zekral might be changing, and Kane knew that their mission was far from over. But as they looked out at the darkening sky, they felt a newfound hope that peace could be possible. The start of a friendship. As days passed, Captain Julia Kane and her crew continued their interactions with the Zekral. The initial contact had shown promise, but building a true relationship with these formidable predators was still a long way off. The crew worked tirelessly to learn more about the Zekral's language and customs, hoping to bridge the gap between their worlds. Kane spent most of her time with the Khazar, the leader of the Zekral. She was careful to show respect and patience. Each day, she and her team brought new tools and devices to help communicate. They used images, sounds, and even small gifts to show goodwill. The Khazar watched these, efforts with a mix of curiosity and caution. One day, as Kane was setting up a new communication device, the Khazar approached her with a low, inquisitive growl. Kane looked up and saw that the leader was holding a strange, carved object in its claws. It was a kind of intricate, glowing stone. Kane guessed it was a gift or a symbol of respect. She accepted it with a grateful smile, showing the Khazar that she valued its gesture. Kane and her team took the object back to their ship to study it. They discovered that it was a form of communication used by the Zekral, a way to show trust and friendship. This discovery was a significant breakthrough. It meant that the Zekral were starting to see the humans as allies rather than enemies. With this new understanding, Kane and her crew redoubled their efforts. They began to notice changes in the Zekral behavior. The once hostile growls turned into softer, more curious sounds. The Zekral started to approach the humans more often, though they still kept their distance. It was clear that trust was being built, but it was fragile and needed time to grow. The Galactic Council was watching these developments with great interest. News of the growing connection between humans and the Zekral spread quickly. Some council members were amazed and hopeful, while others remained skeptical and worried. They debated whether this new alliance was a sign of progress or a dangerous gamble. Kane continued to work hard to strengthen the bond with the Zikral. One day, she invited the Khazar to a special gathering. She wanted to show the Zikral more about human culture, hoping to build a deeper connection. The crew set up a display of Earth's music and art, projecting images and sounds from their home planet. The Zikral watched the display with fascination. The music was unlike anything they had heard before, and the images of Earth's landscapes and creatures were new and intriguing. The Khazar seemed particularly interested, its eyes glowing with a mix of awe and contemplation. Kane and her crew used this opportunity to further their communication. They carefully explained the meanings behind the music and art, showing how these elements were important to human culture. The Zikral responded with their own form of expression, a series of deep, rhythmic sounds that seemed to convey emotions and stories. It was clear that the Zikral had their own rich culture and traditions. As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between the humans and the Zikral grew stronger. The Khazar began to trust Kane and her team more, often inviting them to observe important Zikral rituals and ceremonies. The humans were honored by these invitations and took great care to show their respect. The bond between the two species was still in its early stages, but the progress was encouraging. The Zikral had begun to see humans as more than just potential enemies. They were starting to recognize them as friends and allies. Back on the Endeavor, the crew felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. They knew that their mission was far from complete, but the signs of friendship with the Zikral were promising. The journey had been difficult, but it was proving that even the most dangerous and feared species could find common ground. As the sun set over the harsh landscape of the Zikral's homeworld, Kane and her crew looked out with optimism. They had taken a significant step toward building a lasting alliance, and the future seemed a little brighter with each passing day. A shock to the galaxy. Back on their home planets, the news about the growing friendship between the humans and the Zikral spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council was abuzz with reactions, and the galaxy's different species watched with a mix of astonishment and anxiety. The Council had expected the Zikral to be a threat, and the idea of them becoming allies with humans was hard for many to accept. In the Grand Chamber of the Council, delegates from various planets argued loudly. Some supported Captain Julia Kane's efforts, while others were deeply worried about the potential dangers. The holographic images of the Zikral flickered on the screen, showing their fierce appearance and reminding everyone of their fearsome reputation. "Humans have taken a huge risk," said Delegate Lyra, representing the planet of Saurus, "but their actions might change the balance of power in the galaxy." Delegate Naro from the planet of Kethar disagreed. "This is madness. The Zikral are dangerous predators. Allowing them to join the Council could be catastrophic. What if they decide to turn on us?" The debate grew heated. Some council members were intrigued by the idea of peace with the Zikral, seeing it as a chance for a new era of cooperation. Others were fearful and believed that humanity's actions were too risky. On the other side of the galaxy, various species began to react to the news. Some saw it as a sign of hope. The idea of making peace with such a feared species seemed almost impossible. But the fact that it was happening was a testament to humanity's diplomatic skills. These species began to consider the possibility of new alliances and partnerships. However, not everyone was supportive. A secretive faction within the Council, known as the Anti-Peace Coalition, feared that the Zikral's strength would upset the balance of power. They believed that the Zikral were too dangerous to be trusted and planned to sabotage the growing relationship. The faction's leader, a shrewd and calculating alien named Dreas, saw an opportunity to act. Dreas and his team secretly devised a plan to create chaos and mistrust. They decided to send a covert team to attack the Zikral in an attempt to provoke a conflict. Their goal was to frame the Zikral as a threat and undermine the peace efforts. Unbeknownst to Kane and her crew, the covert team launched a surprise attack on a small Zikral settlement. The Zikral responded with anger and confusion. They were not used to such deceitful actions, and their initial reaction was to prepare for war. The tension in the Zikral territory soared. When Kane learned about the attack, she was shocked and deeply concerned. She immediately contacted the Khazar and other Zikral leaders, trying to explain that the attack was not the work of humans. The Z-Crawl were skeptical, but Kane's sincerity and previous efforts helped to calm them down. The Galactic Council was thrown into turmoil. The news of the attack reached them, and the anti-peace coalition used it to their advantage. They argued that the Z-Crawl were too dangerous to be trusted and demanded that the Council take immediate action against them. Kane worked tirelessly to resolve the situation. She coordinated with the Z-Crawl to investigate the attack and uncover the truth. Through a combination of diplomacy and detective work, Kane's team discovered evidence pointing to the anti-peace coalition's involvement. With the truth revealed, the Council was forced to take action. The anti-peace coalition was exposed and their leaders were arrested. The attack was condemned, and the Council publicly supported Kane's peace efforts. However, the damage to trust between humans and the Z-Crawl was not easily repaired. Despite the challenges, Kane remained determined. She continued to work closely with the Z-Crawl, reassuring them of humanity's commitment to peace. Slowly, the bond between the two species began to heal. The Z-Crawl were cautious but willing to give the Alliance another chance. As the situation stabilized, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The events had shown both the potential and the risks of making peace with a previously feared species. The path ahead was uncertain, but humanity's efforts had proven that even the most daunting challenges could be overcome with determination and trust. Kane and her crew looked out at the stars with renewed resolve. They had faced significant obstacles, but their commitment to peace remained strong. The journey was far from over, but the possibility of a brighter future seemed within reach. This part explores the reactions of the galaxy to the budding friendship, the sabotage attempt, and the steps taken to repair the damage and restore trust. Trust in trouble. As peace efforts continued between the humans and the Z-Crawl, a new threat emerged. Despite the revelation of the anti-peace coalition's sabotage, tensions still lingered. The Z-Crawl remained wary, and many council members questioned whether the Alliance could survive. Captain Julia Kane and her crew were working hard to rebuild trust. They spent long hours with the Z-Crawl, participating in their rituals and learning more about their culture. The Z-Crawl appreciated these gestures, but their wariness was not easily forgotten. One day, Kane received alarming news. There were reports of a new attack on a Z-Crawl outpost. The Z-Crawl were furious and suspected that humans might be behind it. The reports were ambiguous, but the fear of another betrayal was enough to cause unrest among the Z-Crawl. Kane knew she had to act quickly to prevent a full-blown conflict. She called an emergency meeting with the Khazar and other Z-Crawl leaders. They met in a neutral area between their territories, surrounded by high, rocky cliffs. The atmosphere was tense, and the Z-Crawl's growls were low and menacing. "We need to find out who is behind these attacks," Kane said firmly. "The humans did not launch this attack. We must work together to uncover the truth." The Khazar stared at her with a mixture of suspicion and anger. "How can we trust you after the recent betrayal? The peace between our species is fragile." Kane nodded, understanding their concerns. "I know trust is hard to rebuild, but we need to find the real enemy. The anti-peace coalition is still out there, and they want to see us fail. We need to prove that we can overcome their attempts to divide us." The Khazar seemed to consider Kane's words. After a long silence, it finally nodded. "Very well. We will work with you, but know that any further deception will be met with swift consequences." With a shaky truce in place, Kane and the Z-Crawl set out to investigate the attack. They gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed the scene of the outpost. It became clear that the attack had been carefully planned to look like it was the work of humans. As the investigation progressed, Kane and her team uncovered a trail of clues leading to a hidden base operated by a splinter group of the anti-peace coalition. This group had continued to plot against both humans and the Z-Crawl, hoping to create chaos and prevent the alliance from forming. Kane shared their findings with the Z-Crawl, and together they planned a mission to capture the remaining members of the splinter group. The operation was risky, but it was necessary to ensure the safety and trust between the two species. The mission was a success. The splinter group was apprehended and their plans were exposed. The Z-Crawl saw that the attack had been orchestrated by those who sought to undermine the peace process. They were impressed by Kane's dedication and the cooperation between their two species. As the splinter group members were brought to justice, the Z-Crawl began to relax. The incidents had shown them that humanity was truly committed to peace, and that the threats they faced came from those who wanted to see them fail. The Galactic Council, witnessing the efforts and results of the investigation, publicly supported the renewed alliance. They acknowledged the courage and perseverance of both humans and the Zikral. The Council's endorsement helped to stabilize the situation, but the path to full trust was still a long one. Kane and her crew returned to the endeavor with a sense of accomplishment, though they knew there was still work to be done. The fragile peace between humans and the Zikral was beginning to solidify, but the journey was far from over. The alliance needed continued effort and understanding from both sides. As they looked out at the stars, Kane felt a renewed hope. Despite the challenges, the bond between humans and the Zikral was growing stronger. They had faced adversity and emerged with a deeper connection. The future held many uncertainties, but the commitment to peace and cooperation was a powerful force. A big decision. With the recent attacks uncovered and the splinter group brought to justice, the situation between humans and the Zikral began to stabilize. Both sides worked hard to repair the damage and strengthen their alliance. Yet, the Galactic Council faced a crucial decision that could impact the future of the galaxy. The Council had been watching the progress closely. The recent events had demonstrated both the potential and the risks of integrating the Zikral into the galaxy's wider community. Now, it was time for the Council to decide whether to officially welcome the Zikral as allies or to keep them at arm's length. A special session of the Council was called to vote on the matter. Delegates from all over the galaxy gathered in the Grand Chamber, their expressions a mix of anticipation and concern. The debate was expected to be intense, as the decision could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Captain Julia Kane was present at the session, standing with her crew. She felt a mix of nervousness and hope. She had worked hard to build trust with the Zikral and to prove their commitment to peace. Now she was ready to make one final push to convince the Council of the benefits of accepting the Zikral. The session began with speeches from various delegates. Some spoke in favor of the Zikral's inclusion, praising the efforts made by Kane and her team. They argued that the Zikral had shown a willingness to cooperate and that their strength could be a valuable asset in the galaxy. Delegate Zara from Alara said, "The Zikral have proven that they are more than just predators. They have shown courage and a desire for peace. By welcoming them into our community, we can foster greater understanding and unity." On the other side, there were delegates who remained cautious. Delegate Naro from Kethar was vocal in his opposition. "We cannot ignore the risks," he said. "The Zikral are still a formidable force. Integrating them into the galaxy could lead to unforeseen dangers. We must be careful." The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made and counter-arguments were presented. The Council members weighed the potential benefits of the alliance against the risks involved. Tensions were high as each side presented their case. When it was Kane's turn to speak, she stepped up to the podium with determination. She addressed the Council with sincerity and passion. "I understand the concerns about the Zikral. They are indeed a powerful species. But through our efforts, we have seen that they are also capable of peace and cooperation. We have faced challenges together and have overcome them. This is a chance to build a new future, not just for us, but for all the species in the galaxy." Kane continued, "By accepting the Zikral into our community, we are not just forging an alliance. We are setting an example of what can be achieved when we work together. The galaxy has always been divided, but now we have an opportunity to bring about change. We must take this chance to show that unity is possible." The Council listened intently. Kane's words had a profound impact, and many delegates began to reconsider their positions. The decision was not just about the Zikral, it was about the future direction of the galaxy and the possibility of a new era of cooperation. After the speeches and debates, it was time for the vote. The delegates cast their ballots and the results were tallied. The chamber fell silent as the final count was announced. The vote was close, but in the end, the majority supported the acceptance of the Zikral into the galaxy's community. The decision marked a historic moment, a new chapter in the galaxy's history. Captain Kane and her crew were relieved and overjoyed. The Zikral were officially welcomed as allies. It was a significant achievement, but Kane knew that the real work was just beginning. The integration of the Zikral would require continued effort and cooperation. As the council session ended, Kane looked out at the stars with a sense of accomplishment. The path ahead would be challenging, but the decision to embrace the Zakral was a step toward a more united and peaceful galaxy. The journey of building trust and understanding had paved the way for a new era of cooperation, and the future held the promise of new possibilities. A new era. With the Galactic Council's decision to welcome the Zakral as allies, a new chapter began for both humans and the Zakral. The alliance marked the start of a new era of cooperation and understanding in the galaxy. However, turning this historic decision into a lasting reality would require effort and dedication from all sides. Captain Julia Kane and her crew were at the forefront of this new journey. They continued to work closely with the Zakral, helping them integrate into the galaxy's political and social structures. The Zakral's inclusion was a complex process, involving diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and logistical arrangements. One of the first steps was to establish a permanent embassy for the Zakral on a neutral planet chosen by the Galactic Council. This embassy would serve as a place for ongoing communication and cooperation between the Zakral and other species. Kane and her team were heavily involved in setting up the embassy, ensuring that it met the needs of the Zakral, while also fostering positive relations with other species. The grand opening of the Zakral embassy was a significant event. Delegates from various planets attended the ceremony, and the atmosphere was filled with a mix of excitement and anticipation. The Khazar and other Zakral leaders were present, representing their people with pride. During the opening ceremony, Kane gave a speech emphasizing the importance of unity and collaboration. "Today marks a new beginning," she said. "We have shown that even the most feared and powerful species can find common ground with others. Our journey together will shape the future of the galaxy, and we must work together to make it a future of peace and prosperity." The Zakral leaders expressed their gratitude and commitment to the alliance. The ceremony concluded with a traditional Zakral display of strength and skill, showcasing their cultural heritage and demonstrating their willingness to share their traditions with others. In the months that followed, the Zakral began to integrate into the galaxy's community. They participated in interspecies conferences, contributed to joint projects, and engaged in cultural exchanges. The process was not without challenges, but both sides were committed to making it work. One major project was the development of a joint research initiative aimed at exploring new technologies and advancing scientific knowledge. The collaboration brought together the best minds from various species, including humans and Zakral. Their combined efforts led to exciting discoveries and innovations that benefited everyone. Kane and her crew continued to play a key role in fostering the alliance. They traveled to different planets, meeting with leaders and citizens, and working to address any issues that arose. Their efforts helped to smooth over any misunderstandings and strengthen the bonds between the Zakral and other species. As time went on, the initial skepticism and fear surrounding the Zakral began to fade. The successful integration of the Zakral into the galaxy's community demonstrated that even the most challenging barriers could be overcome through cooperation and understanding. The galaxy began to change. Species that had once been isolated or divided started to collaborate more closely. The alliance between humans and the Zakral set an example of what could be achieved when differences were put aside in favor of mutual respect and shared goals. Kane and her crew looked back on their journey with a sense of pride. They had faced numerous obstacles and had worked tirelessly to build a bridge between two worlds. Their efforts had paid off, leading to a new era of unity and cooperation in the galaxy. As they gazed at the stars from the Endeavor, Kane reflected on how far they had come. The journey was far from over, but the future looked brighter than ever. The galaxy was now a place where even the most feared species could find a place among others, and that was a powerful testament to the strength of peace and partnership. In the end, the story of the humans and the Zakral was a story of overcoming fear, embracing differences, and building a better future together. It was a reminder that even in the vast expanse of space, the desire for understanding and cooperation could lead to incredible achievements.